Hey, this is Zong,
And this is Klaw.
and welcome to the Zong and Klaw Geek Out podcast.
Today we are talking about Buggy games.
So sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. Hi guys, as you are aware, on this episode we're going to talk about Buggy games. There are a lot of games that we can discuss, but unfortunately we do not want a 24-hour podcast of us talking about games and bugs in them. If you want to do more research, by all means, guys. So we've picked a few selections that we thought stood out while they've been released.
I'm sure we'll think of some more while we're racing away as well.
We'll jump straight in. The first one we're going to talk about is Cyberpunk.
Oh, I mean, this is pretty much the reason we decided to do this whole thing in the first place, wasn't it?
So it didn't have a great start.
It had a terrible start.
From what I know, it's still not in a great start.
It's still it's a lot better, especially if you're playing on like PC or the new consoles. You know, it's playable now. It's still a bit wonky in places, shall we say.
For those who don't know, Cyberpunk is by CD Red, who made the Witcher series. It's based on the board game, isn't it?
It's a roleplay game.
Roleplay, yeah.
From the 80s originally, I think. Same name. Very popular in America, apparently. It's not one I've heard of so much. I'm more of a Dungeons & Dragons and Shadowrun kind of person. But there we go.
And when they released it, it got slaughtered, really. To the point where PlayStation took it off the store and issued refunds to anybody who came knocking at the door, basically. And there has been a lot of press about it. CD Red have been investigated by...
Yes, there's a few class action lawsuits,
Yeah,
mostly brought to them by investors rather than by gamers.
Yeah.
Because the investors are claiming that they were kept in the dark and lied to and all this kind of thing. I don't know, the whole thing kind of bugs me because... mostly because, yes, it was a buggy mess. But as we will kind of get onto, there's plenty of other games that have come out in far worse conditions than that was, and they got away with it.
The investor stuff, I think that's a separate matter to this. But like in like the gaming sort of community part, like Ubisoft could fuck up on a game, which they have multiple. Not hating Ubisoft, I'm just saying Ubisoft.
Go to me for hating on Ubisoft.
but like Ubisoft can do this with their games. And they're like, say, for a day in the headlines, for the gaming community, and that's all. Then all is forgiven. But the one thing I like about CD Red, they are very transparent. They will release statements and say, unfortunately, like when Cyberpunk got pushed back, they were before I read their statement before I heard it anywhere else. They were there straight away going, "I'm sorry, we're pushing it back." So we're not going to go into many bugs about this game because obviously, as you can tell from what we're talking about, it was a complete mess of a game.
I think the thing for me is that it's still playable even on the Xbox One S. It was it's a bit of a slideshow kind of frame rate wise, but it was still playable. Whereas there's been other games that have come out and have just not been at all playable.
I don't think I showed you, but there was that video of that one flying where they were playing and they were running somewhere and then also they started getting lifted up in the air. It was that bad. They were floating up in midair and they were going through buildings. Then they were in the middle of, where your first apartment is, dropped. They were trying everything to do to obviously save themselves. So for me, that would pee me off and be like, you know what,
But no, it's like there's some of the bugs that just didn't make any sense to me either. Sort of thinking on a technical standpoint, I still can't quite wrap my head around what they were doing, assumably in optimization or something, that was causing these things to happen. It was like the bug with the chopsticks. Where you're talking to Jackie and he's eating his noodles with the chopsticks. As he moves the chopsticks around, he leaves duplicate copies of the chopsticks just in random positions around the place. It's just like, why is it even duplicating the object in the first place? You load in your object, you do your positioning manipulation for your animations. Why at points did it seem to be quite literally leaving the object in place and then reloading it and carrying on? It's just like, what? My brain just boggles as to how that ends up being an actual thing.
Okay, I'm sure that's not meant to be happening, but okay.
Yeah, I think that's actually one of the bugs in the game that's less commented on is the fact that the AI for the cars driving around the city is just terrible. They just crash and start incidents that you have nothing to do with, and suddenly you're in the middle of a fight because some numpties just crashed into a bunch of people. It's like, I don't...
We'll probably talk more about this when we get to this game. Is the AI better on the pavements than the other game where they don't throw themselves into the road?
I would say Cyberpunk is probably worse than that. From my own experience of it, Cyberpunk, it's just the way you just see cars just go careening off and crashing into things. It's just like, I can understand them putting in like an element of that, so that, every once in a while, people crash their cars.
Yeah, to make it a bit more realistic,
Yeah.
but not.
But the
constant.
frequency that it happens at is just like, what the hell?
These kind of bugs we're talking about have never happened to me. I had stupid little ones like the chopstick thing where the police officer having a smoke and he's got his hand down by his side, and as he lifts up to have a smoke, instead of the cigarette going with him, the cigarette's in midair, and even when they move away, it's still in midair. Things like that, or little bits where you sort of, as you're walking, you sort of dip to the floor, but you pop back straight.
Yeah, I didn't have that. I had the unable to zoom. I think I couldn't reload and I couldn't zoom the gun and had to reload to get it to work again.
Me and Demi, who had the game crash, I know I had it.
Yeah, and I've had the game crash a couple of times.
Yeah, and it's alright when you're sort of on it, walking around doing nothing, but I normally had it when I was about to start a mission or was in a mission, the game would just throw me back to the Xbox home screen, and I'm like, hello?
Yeah, again, unfortunately, that behaviour is something that immediately makes me think of Ubisoft and pretty much any game they've put out ever.
So,
but I think the other thing that I find weird with Cyberpunk is it's a game that was in development for something like 8 to 10 years.
Oh.
I think it was like 2013 or something. I think they first did the reveal trailer. I'm pretty sure it was 2013.
Yeah, because I remember The Witcher was not even out yet, or just came out or something.
Probably the first and second one would have been out.
Yeah, I'm sure the third one was coming out, or
Yeah.
it had been out or something.
Yeah, but the game is it's just so rushed in so many places. It's things like, if you look at the curbstone, it's like, I know that there's some elements of it where they're trying to make it look more realistic with things not quite lining up and things like that.
Yeah.
But there's so many areas where it just looks like somebody's in a hurry with the copy and paste on the curb object, kind of slapped it down round corners, and it all just looks almost amateur. You don't notice it when you're just kind of surveying the whole scene, but if you stop and look carefully, there's all these areas where they've just not quite hit the normal kind of polish you expect in a lot of games now. And I had one thing where I discovered somewhere where you go in a little corner area. There's the little newsagents units.
Yeah.
I found somewhere where there's 3 of those.
Side by side.
All side by side. Slightly different layouts of them, because I'm guessing they've got some kind of randomizer that kind of changes the layout and changes who the shopkeeper is and things like that. In fact, it's just these 3 almost identical looking newsagents all tucked in this one little corner.
So the next game that we chose was Fallout 4. It's funny because somebody did say to me, if I liked Cyberpunk, why do I not like Fallout 4? Because they're not saying that the games are exactly the same, but the kind of the upgrading and the leveling up is the same, and I'm like, I just don't like the look of Fallout 4.
It's just that you're almost thrown just into a wilderness a bit too quickly.
Yeah, it is buggy. It's not as buggy as Fallout 76. That game was completely trash.
I mean, it was just a complete repeat of Elder Scrolls Online, really. Elder Scrolls Online was pretty terrible when it first came out. I think Fallout 76, they tried to push it even closer to being like Fallout, but online, whereas at least Elder Scrolls, they kind of brought in more MMO elements to make it work, whereas 76, they were just trying to make here's a world, go living it with people, and the NPCs were terrible, and it was just... I don't know if it's necessarily buggy so much as just completely lacking in any form of content whatsoever.
Fallout 4, it was your typical bugs, really, wasn't it? Stuff like things freezing, cutting out, dying randomly, and those kind of bug things. I think that's what we mainly got from Fallout 4.
Yeah, pretty much what you've come to expect from Bethesda. Which I think is which again is the problem with this whole like cyberpunk thing. It's just like every game Bethesda have released since pretty much Oblivion has had various horrific game-breaking bugs from day one that I don't understand how they kind of get away with. But no, Bethesda again. I mean, I know they've got the excuse that's often given, and you probably noticed that most of these massively buggy games are your big open world, epic adventure type things. So there's a lot of content to create. There's a lot of debugging. But the fact that it's a large area for the bug testers to cover absolutely everything. You're talking about people will put 200-300 plus hours into these things, which again, bug testers spending that amount of time on a single playthrough is not going to happen that often. And even if they do spend that amount of time, they maybe won't be quite so vigilant as a player would be with collecting every last item and every last this and every last that. So it's going to happen. There are going to be bugs. Still pretty shocking the state that a lot of Bethesda games, especially probably like the worst one. I know Skyrim was the one that it was like most prevalent in. Was after you played the game for somewhere around the 100-150 hour kind of mark, you'd start reaching this point where if you'd picked up lots of items or all this kind of thing, the save file would be starting to hit kind of. It's not an arbitrary limit, but especially on the consoles, they're having to fit the entire game into a certain amount of memory, and because of the nature of the game, most of your save file has to stay in memory at all times. It would just get to a point where the save file would be so big that it would run out of space, it would then corrupt, but it would then save the corrupted version of the file, and then you're pooped. That really was not a good one with Skyrim, especially as it came so far into it. I think the game had been out probably a month or so before I think anybody, or at least enough people, hit the bug for it to be taken seriously. Back to Cyberpunk, they had that happen on the PC version because they'd actually put in an arbitrary, or 8 meg or whatever it was, it's like the maximum file size, and people actually managed to hit that, admittedly by using certain exploits that cycled through and got them loads of equipment, but they were hitting that limit a lot sooner. At least in that case, they just went, oh yeah, we've just bumped up the limit because it's not on a system that's limited by RAM, whereas the Skyrim issue was on the PS3 and Xbox 360, where they were really having to keep everything proper tight and cozy.
The next one we want to talk about, which is going to be nice and short, No Man's Sky.
Yeah, I was wondering why you put this one on the list, to be honest.
I know there's still bugs in it, but like we've said before, what game hasn't got bugs in it?
Yeah.
So we're talking about the first version of it got released. To sum it up, it wasn't what they promised. And when I say that, I literally mean it was not the game they advertised at all.
It was threadbare. They literally... I mean, the system for generating nigh on infinite worlds and creating this massive, like, full universe-sized space with a team of programmers and developers and everything that I think was, 10-man team or something at the time? Was absolutely phenomenal, but they kind of then didn't get round to actually putting any game.
No, because they were saying, like, the universe was that vast that it was going to take you over 1,000 years to actually explore it all. Multiplayer was where you could go in and out as well of each other's games. There was multiplayer in it where you saw other players, but literally as soon as they docked in the space hangar, that was it, they were gone.
No, I think I thought with the very original one, it was one big online world, effectively.
Oh yeah, but they
were like, you could bump into other players.
Oh, from what I remember, it was like a multiplayer game. You will bump into others. I think the way maybe I took it when they said about it was you were going to see not just a massive universe full of planets and space stations, it was going to be like, in my head I've got like stalls in my head where there's like ships flying past you and all that, but it wasn't. It was just literally like a rock with a space station on it and stars.
Yeah, I think a lot of people were kind of hoping for EVE Online, but with first-person gameplay, and it was never that.
But obviously since then, this is the thing, like we talked about CD Red. This is another one that they've promised, didn't deliver on anything basically what they said, up to par with what they said. But then everyone's like raved and ranted about it. They've gone away, redone it all, and then they're all of a sudden it's like, yay, No Man's Sky, let's play No Man's Sky. It's like,
yeah, well, it was one of the first big Kickstarter successes, wasn't it?
Yeah.
I think so. It kind of had that slight bit of a get out of jail of, they were like, oh, well, we said we're going to release by this date. This is how far we've got. You know, most of the people who were getting the game day one had already, you know, backed it, so they were just getting a copy of it. So, you know, they pushed it out. I think they had a deal with Sony by that point, which was probably, again, giving time pressures. But in all fairness to them, you know, the game came out, it was a complete flop. Because, again, I said it wasn't really buggy, it just wasn't that interesting.
Yeah.
But just give up.
Oh no, fair play.
And they actually did then, 6-12 months later, deliver on a massive content patch. Even though by that point they didn't know if it was going to be enough to get more people to buy the game or not.
I know I mentioned it last week in the news. Anthem, that came out. It is exactly what they said it was going to do, but not to the standard that they said it would do.
Yeah, I think that one, it's also just a big disappointment.
Yeah.
Because BioWare was so well known for these rich, amazing stories. You know, you got Mass Effect, you got KOTOR.
But the fact that they went away, realising they've kind of screwed the pooch on it, and they were doing updates, but then unlike No Man's Sky, who kept on going and pushed it out, and if it was going to sell again and make it a hit, whatever, and it paid off for them, as BioWare started doing that, like rebuilding Anthem, and then also they've spent like half a year on it, and they've gone, oh, sorry, can't do it anymore.
Yeah, well, that's good. That's the difference. It's obviously BioWare falls under the EA bracket, but in their instance, I don't think they were in a case where it was going to keep selling to any kind of decent extent for EA to make money. Whereas No Man's Sky, it was a very, very small team. Any money from it went directly to them.
Yeah.
And I think just the Kickstarter and then the additional day one sales gave them a sizable chunk of money that they could continue to live and go, you know, we're passionate about this game, we want to make it work. And when they delivered that improved content and suddenly everybody's going, oh wow, this is far closer to the game we wanted, a load more people bought it. And again, it's then going into this. I think they had expanded the team by then, but it was still by game standards, a very small team. So in terms of actually having money to keep paying the bills and all the rest of it, that's all they were really interested in.
But I mean, at the end of the day, it's all about money in this industry. But it just irritates me. It said, like, if BioWare had said, we're working on Anthem to make it better, then a year and a half later, go, we stopped. I think I would still be a bit peeved because I was a fan of Anthem, but I would have been a bit more, okay, I understand. But the fact that they put out footage of, oh, this is what we're doing with the skill tree, this is how how this javelin fights, this is what the javelin looks like now. The fact that they were pumping like updates out with actual video footage, and then to go, and like I said in the news, the excuses they gave were a bit.
I mean, that's why I feel sorry for people who end up working for EA and Ubisoft and companies like that, because on a regular basis you can end up spending 2-3 years of your life and your career developing a game that suddenly they go, actually, even though we've spent X million pounds, X million dollars on this game, don't think it's going to recoup that, so it's not worth us spending any more money on it. It'd be soul destroying for people putting like all this effort into the game, especially like you say with Anthem. They were like, right, we can do this, we can make it the game we want it to be, and to just have the legs taken out from under you. With any luck, it'll be one of those things that they repurpose a lot of that work into something else. Whether that's in the future they actually do a Anthem 2, maybe they give it another shot and kind of pull all that stuff out.
As you were talking about Ubisoft, the game Watch Dogs Legion. Oh, and by the way, refer to it as Watch Dogs 3. Please hit me.
Okay.
For those who are out there, it is not Watch Dogs 3, even though it is the third game in the series. So, Watch Dogs Legion, it is a brilliant game. it is a lot better than number 2. No offense to Ubisoft. I know we're dragging you in the mud at the moment. But number 1 was fantastic, very dark. Number 2 was a bit more light-hearted.
Yeah, I mean, the main issue I had with 2 is that I know you did have a gun in 1, and you did shoot people and stuff. I don't know, it just felt like 2 was like, oh, you could do hacking, or you can just, like, pretend it's GTA and go around with a gun.
That's the feel I get with number 2, it was very much, we're competing with GTA more now, and like and then with Legion, it kind of, I don't think it was as dark storyline as number 1 was. Number 2 was just about profiling and things like that.
Yeah, I think Legion had some carryovers of 2. That there are definitely times when it's a little bit throwaway with the violence at times. You're just like, so we're quite happy with just like shooting people now.
Yeah, but honestly, as good as the game was, it had its flaws. I only really experienced one bug. It's funny, when I was doing research about bugs for this, it never appeared anywhere. But what happened with me was, you got so far into the game, and because they were trying out that new save to the cloud, online save. So you start your game up, go from your last save, you play along, then all of a sudden you'll get a notification saying that you are no longer on. Well, I played on Xbox, so I got you've been disconnected from Xbox Live.
Yeah.
Thought nothing of it. Thought, nah, it's just Microsoft playing around. Carried on playing, came off the game. It auto saves. 5 missions I did between that had all disappeared. The only way around I got it was, as soon as it popped up saying I'd been disconnected, I came straight off. So it like reset the game.
Yeah, I think they were advising at the time to literally do a mission, log out, log back in, do a mission, log. It's just like,
obviously, at the time when I had this bug, I looked it up. It was everywhere. But then everyone referred it to when you did mission 404. That as soon as you start that mission, that's when the glitch happened.
I was going to say, it was random. And I think the thing that annoyed me with that more than anything was that up to that point, I'd been playing it and be going, oh my god, it's a Ubisoft game that doesn't have lots of hideous bugs.
Uh-huh.
I mean, I was in heaven. I mean, I think the only bug I'd had up to that point, it was I had once randomly, when you went into your little underground base bit, there was some random NPC just laying on the floor. No good reason, he was just laying on the floor. And I think the other one I had again in that area was one of the people I'd recruited, when I was supposed to be able to talk to him, was just sat on the edge of the stairs crying for no good reason. Those are relatively minor.
Like, I had a football hooligan, she was brilliant. Then later in the game, I was somewhere else, and there was 3 of it all together. And I'm like, okay. They did use the same models for a lot of things, which I found a bit disappointing. I mean, like I said, it was very ambitious of them. That the fact that was limited to, so you can only have so many. I think it wouldn't be as noticeable, but it's the fact that you had to go up to them and see them, and you're like... Oh.
Yeah, and you did have some like interesting moments, like the bit where you have to go and recruit a builder.
Yeah.
And you literally just walk... It's kind of like you're walking down the red light district of builders. And there's just like all these builders hanging out outside the building site, and you can like go and browse them all and go, which one do I like the most to recruit for my party? It's just like, what?
I mean, you were talking about the other bugs you had. The only other bug I had, apart from like the voice change, was like typically with like when the Xbox freaks out, was the game would crash and throw me back to the main menu, as in the dashboard of the Xbox. But I only had that like twice, maybe 3 times.
But pretty much every game that came out at that time, because this was like just before the Series X and PlayStation 5 came out.
Yeah, it was. Yeah.
And pretty much every game that came out in that month period was reporting similar issues. Watch Dogs was crashing out. Valhalla was crashing out. Call of Duty was crashing out. And when it comes to Watch Dogs and Call of Duty, at least, they both carried on crashing on the new consoles anyway, coming out.
In Watch Dogs, you drive to like, there is a parking space on the road, you park up, and those on the pavement would like literally throw a fit that you were anywhere near them.
Yeah, that bit was slightly worse in Watch Dogs, but it was just the AI of the actual car driving itself in
Exactly.
Cyberpunk.
See,
It's just what the hell.
with Watch Dogs, it was like, don't get me wrong. I mean, if you saw how I drive in Watch Dogs, it is very much GTA. You just run everybody over. But it's like when you get to your destination in Watch Dogs, and obviously because it's based in London, you've got like on road parking. You go to park up nice and slowly, like you would do in real life. Then you got people walking past, they're going, "Oh my God, call the police!" Or because you like clip the curb, or they do the whole thing where they throw themselves in front of your car, which I do like because I do run them over then. But that's just me. But I will admit, from what I know, Watch Dogs Legion didn't have that many bugs. It was just, I think it had bugs that were like major to the point of like not saving, crashing.
The save thing was terrible.
Like
and
that.
They took forever. But have they fixed it?
They should have done. I remember when, because we wanted to go online and play with each other on Watch Dogs, and I looked it up, and they said that was going to be in December last year. And then when I looked up about the save one, they said they were aware of it, but they're not touching it until the following year, which kind of peed me off a bit. I thought, hang on, the online stuff I personally could wait for. I'd rather know that I can play a game and not worry about spending like 5 hours on it to find out it only saved 2 hours worth.
Yeah,
It's just the game
I think
itself.
it's more an issue with games that want to try and come out for the holiday season. Because Legion was other than the bug issue, Legion was, one of the best games they've put out in a long time.
Oh God,
I'm
yeah.
enjoying Phoenix as well. I mean, they're all still. My issue with Ubisoft has always been the whole Ubisoft game, where it's just essentially the same mechanics, just with a different skin. For a very long time, Assassin's Creed, Far Cry, even Watch Dogs to an extent was all just the same formula with a different lick of paint to it. Let's be honest.
Talking about Assassin's Creed Unity.
Oh my God, the horrors!
I think it was very ambitious of them because it was the online co-op, wasn't it? It was the French Revolution one, wasn't it?
Yeah. But again, I mean, this is the thing. Is again why I'm upset about CD Projekt Red being in so much trouble over Cyberpunk. Is Cyberpunk, for all of the issues, all of the bugs, which are many of them and quite atrocious in places, but the game was still playable.
Yeah.
Assassin's Creed Unity was not playable for 2-3 months after launch?
Yeah. It looked like something out of a horror film.
I think the other thing with Unity is it really is a proper top 10 hit list of all the bugs from other games.
Yeah.
So you've got the no faces, you've got the walking off of an edge of something and just carrying on walking in midair for no good reason and just walk your way across the map. You've got where people fall on the ground and suddenly become this twisted, weird, contorted, freaky mess.
Oh, that was freaky. And I think, didn't it suffer a lot from falling through the map as well?
Yeah, falling through the map. NPCs randomly just adopting a pose and then shooting across the map in a straight line.
Sorry, you see that many videos of them and they add the little flick noise into them? It's funny, yeah.
The one I watched earlier had there's two NPCs just went in a sitting position, low to the ground, and they just zoomed past, and they actually put car noises on them, zoom, zoom. It's what the hell?
And like you said, this is what irritates me about CD Red. That there were bugs in Cyberpunk and everything, but they're getting slaughtered. But at least you can play the game, unlike Unity, where, I mean, can you imagine if you had a 5-year-old child, you turn the game on and then that horror of the no-face bulging eyeballs. They were the major ones that were popping out at the time when Unity went. And like you said, I think it took Ubisoft a good 3 to 4 months before they actually were like, oh, by the way, here's an update.
I mean, there is one last game on our list which I think actually probably tops Unity on how utterly terrible the bugs are, which is WWE 2K20. Oh my God.
Just before...
How?
It was that bad. That is the reason why there has never been another WWE whatever K after it.
Or it's only 2 years ago, anyway.
Well, a wrestling game came out every year. I know there has been another one since then, but it's that cartoony one that flopped as well because I think of the same bugs.
I mean, it's also fair that when you look at it visually, this game came out in 2019. Visually, it looked like it came out in like 2012 for like PlayStation 3.
Yeah, those lovely
which
graphics.
which kind of has that whole thing of did they try making the game? It turned into an utter disaster, and they then went back and pulled out like an old game from the archives and charted it up, and then found out, oh wait, no, this was archived because it's a buggy mess as well. It's it's like there's contortion. There's the ref just kneeling in the middle of the ring while the fighters fight through him.
Yeah, but there's other ones where you pick up like the tables and everything, and they end up like warping into you and twisting in you. And when you go to when you go to hit people with, you hit yourself somehow.
And there's people duck walking all over the place. Large amounts of animation contortions.
Obviously, glitching through the ring. It's
literally.
There was a clip I watched where somebody went to pin someone, and as they got on their knees and actually started pinning them, then themselves went through the ring, and the match was still going. And so whatever the glitch was for them to go through the ring.
Oh, so I saw one where the ref was floating with like his feet at like shoulder height. But it wasn't that. But the thing is that it wasn't that that he was standing on like a false floor or anything. Because then when the other characters were moving and bumping into his legs were swinging, so he was like on a hook. So they must have just like his like core positioning point must have just been worked out wrong and just chucked him up in midair. It's just like, well, how?
You were there when I looked at some pictures of the
freaky faces.
The freaky faces. I mean, this one, she had a pair of sunglasses on, and her eye socket was literally hanging down by her knee. They had masks on, but the masks obviously didn't generate properly on the face. That was it.
So the one I saw, it actually had, so it was like a full over the head mask, but for some reason it then rendered the mask floating above their head. But because the mask had a few holes in it. Obviously, this is part of the way they do optimization for graphics, is that they then only render the parts of the face underneath that they need to render because they're visible through the holes. Yeah. But because the helmet was above the character's head, all you see is then these patches of a face with everything else just missing. It's just like... But
no, I know there is a lot more that was wrong with that game. They really screwed the pooch on that one. And now for the news of the week. Alias reboot, an interview with Jennifer Garner. She says she's up for it and to grab Bradley Cooper back, but there is no set news if they are actually going to reboot Alias.
Sadly, Rockstar Leeds founder Gordon Hall dies at the age of 51.
Microsoft's purchase of Bethesda has gone through. Phil Spencer has been quoted to say that all new games will be exclusive to Xbox. Any current games or new contracts that were made before the takeover will still be across platforms.
Some exciting news in the VR space. Vive has just released a new facial tracker that will do true-to-life facial expressions and mouth movement within games. More rumours about the Switch Pro features have emerged courtesy of Bloomberg. These include a larger 7-inch OLED screen at 720p, the capability to output 4K visuals while docked, and a mid-generation specs increase somewhere kind of similar to the new 3DS when that was around.
Young Guns 3 movie sequel is in development.
Zazie Beetz doesn't know if Domino will return in Deadpool 3. Blade MCU movie will release in 2022.
And finally, Lady Gaga starring the 1990s true crime film House of Gucci. Thanks for listening, guys. If you want more of Southclaw, you can find him on Twitch and Twitter at Southclaw.
If you want more Zong, you can find him on Twitter, Twitch and Facebook at Anubis Zong. And if you want to hear more from us, you'll find us on Twitter at ZongClaw or on Facebook, Zong and Claw Geek Out.
That's the end of the show. Thanks for everyone for listening, and we'll see you all next time. Stay geeky.